Philadelphia's latest signing has everything you want in a wide receiver, except the production recently on an NFL field. And yet hear why this move for a 6'3" athletic freak could have a lot bigger impact for the rest of the pass catchers right now on the Birds. Plus, another edge rusher visits Philly, but this one is very different. I'm Thomas Mott, this is the Thomas Mott Show. Alright, so the Eagles just went out and made another signing, in the exact same mold as the rest of the Birds, 1-year prove-it contracts this offseason, but this time it's for a wide receiver. And it's not just any wide receiver, this one has all the talent in the world, but hasn't figured it out on the field in the NFL. Is he just going to be a camp body, or might he actually threaten some of the established roster guys? That remains to be seen. First though, my next big giveaway officially just arrived in the mail. It is this full-size Eagles helmet with 3 pretty cool signatures. Nolan Smith saying, "Let's hunt." Jordan Davis up here at the top, and then my favorite, Super Bowl champion Quinyon Mitchell right there. This thing is sweet. You want to get in on this, drop a like and be subscribed, giving this away to one of you, my subscribers, towards the end of the month when we get close to the NFL draft. And just for fun, if today's video hits 60,000 views, I'm going to randomly pick one person in the comment section to win yet another official Eagles Super Bowl champion t-shirt. Comment below. And of course, the Eagles signing in question is wide receiver Terrace Marshall. Philadelphia inked to likely a 1-year deal yesterday for very little money. Contract details remain to be seen. Now, for those wondering who Terrace Marshall Jr. is, well, you got to go all the way back to his college days. You're going to remember him then. He was the number 3 wide receiver on that legendary Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson LSU national championship team. Despite being grossly overshadowed by obviously Jefferson and Chase in front of him, Marshall still caught, wait for it, 23 touchdowns his final 2 seasons at LSU. And during his pre-draft process in 2021, his 6'3", 200-pound frame was the envy of a lot of NFL teams, including Philadelphia, who reportedly was very interested in Marshall at that time. However, Carolina would end up grabbing Marshall in the 2nd round back in 2021. And since then, well, his LSU stat lines seem to have been the peak of his overall football career, as his best NFL season overall the past 4 years was in year 2 with the Panthers, and he caught just 28 balls for 490 yards and the lone touchdown of his 4-year career. After that quote-unquote career-high season, 1 year later, Marshall was released by the Panthers and signed on the Niner practice squad before getting cut once again and ending up last year with the Raiders, where he caught just 3 passes for 41 yards. So obviously on one hand, Marshall could very easily simply be a wide receiver camp body who goes to camp for the Philadelphia Eagles and then gets cut, does nothing, and virtually ends his career. On the other hand, though, I do wonder if Philadelphia has different plans for the now 5th-year wide receiver. Last camp, Philadelphia kept just 5 wide receivers on the active 53-man roster, Dotson, Covey, and Johnny Wilson making that cut behind Brown and Smitty. Covey, of course, is now gone, likely replaced by kick returner Avery Williams, and that leaves Johnny Wilson, Anais Smith, and now Terrace Marshall Jr., plus other unnamed draft picks or new UFAs, to compete for 1 overall wide receiver roster spot. Johnny Wilson, for instance, last year, great blocker, very underwhelming pass catcher, barely saw the football field in pass-catching situations, and Anais Smith, still a 5th-round draft pick, had a very hard time even seeing the field. And so Terrace Marshall has a very legit chance to actually make this roster because it's him versus Johnny Wilson versus Anais Smith for the 5th wide receiver spot. And he has all the tools as a physical, athletic freak to finally put it all together, maybe in training camp, and prove everybody wrong. There's definitely an argument that Marshall is the most gifted receiver out of anybody on the Eagles wide receiver roster, obviously behind A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, and that gives him a leg up. Again, can he put it all together? Now, actually making the roster aside, I do start to wonder if this signing reveals anything about Jahan Dotson's future in Philadelphia. As I've chronicled a lot this week, Dotson obviously underperformed because of limited passes his way, although I do think he definitely can still play, and he's entering the final year of his contract in Philadelphia. There's technically a scenario right now where a wide receiver needy team during the draft throws Philadelphia a late-round pick for Dotson, makes him a number 1 or number 2 receiver on their squad, leaving a hole at wide receiver for Philadelphia that could be filled by Marshall, Johnny Wilson, Anais Smith, or somebody else. I'd say that's less likely. I would want to keep Jahan Dotson, but it's definitely a scenario to keep an eye on heading towards the NFL draft. I want y'all's thoughts on Terrace Marshall signing down below in the comment section. Very clear theme going on in Philadelphia this offseason. Guys they liked in the pre-draft process, they liked coming out of college, but couldn't actually draft, who have, not really done much so far in the National Football League. Give them a 1-year prove-it deal, come to Philadelphia, and hope that they can turn out to be the next great, Zach Bond. I don't know if it actually happens with Terrace Marshall, but a very interesting signing nonetheless. Also interesting, how about the latest draft visit in Philadelphia yesterday as Texas A&M edge rusher Nic Scourton officially came to the Birds for his top 30 visit. Now, Scourton makes a ton of sense to Philadelphia. Right now, he's projected as a kind of late first, likely mid to early 2nd-round draft pick who dominated in his only year as a Texas A&M Aggie last season, making the All-SEC team on defense and recording 5 sacks and 1 forced fumble. The big thing about Scourton, though, well, he's absolutely massive, like Telling you he's 6'4", 280 pounds is one thing, but how about showing you this pic of Scourton during his visit to Philadelphia next to Brandon Graham of all people? And if you met BG in person like I have, let me just tell you, he's already a massive guy. Scourton looks giant next to BG right here. Now, size is one thing, but Scourton also has speed, he has power, and a lot of the raw talent you want in an edge rusher. He just needs a little bit of refining. Definitely still a little bit raw. That, of course, reminds me of Jalen Hunt last year. Size, speed, skill, everything was there, just needed the coach and Vic Fangio to figure him out, and what do you know, Jalen Hunt is one of their best edge rushers going into 2025. For me, Nic Scourton screams Eagles second-round pick if I've ever seen one. Now, of course, the NFL draft, we're about 2 weeks away, and so things are going to get really crazy. I think starting next week, maybe it'll be mid to late next week, but look for Philadelphia to maybe make some more moves, obviously finish out their top 30 draft visits, and we'll see what they do the next couple of days, something myself and Josh Davis talked about during our Wednesday live show a couple of days ago, and the conversation got very interesting. I'm excited too. It just still feels so early. Like it's April 9th right now. And, you know, covering the Philadelphia Eagles as we do, the start to April has been very, very quiet. Now, my guess is we're about a week, maybe 2 weeks away. Obviously, the week of the draft is going to be really crazy. But maybe this time next week, we start to get a little bit more rumors. I think Anthony DeBona just put out his most recent updated top 30 visit tracker. We're at 20 so far of the possible 30 visits. And one thing that continues to be a common theme here, Josh, with the Eagles' visits for top 30, very few first-round options. Like, very few people who are guaranteed to go in the first round. And I've talked about this before. Philadelphia is going to make trades during the draft. Adam Schefter saying that was not some sort of hot take, and he kind of corrected himself today on The Fanatic. But they have 20 picks in the next 2 drafts. They're going to move around the draft. My bet, though, would be they're going to move up in this year's draft instead of down. And so I really was kind of expecting to see a lot more of these late teen, early to mid 20 round mock draft players at defensive line, at safety, come to Philadelphia. The way the Eagles could kind of show us, well, you know, we might want to go ahead and move up, but so far they haven't. Again, they have 10 more slots, you know, left to be done. So they could go ahead and do a Mike Green, who I want to talk about, obviously do the safeties. There are plenty of other options, but so far, your top 20 visits, everybody is either like an early second rounder, a later round draft pick, or like a very fringe end of round one. Maybe they, you know, get taken in round one. Maybe they don't. It's very interesting.
I think it's telling.
I think it is
as
too.
You're starting to, you know, go through those names, you go through the list and look at it. If for people that are curious about it, at DeBona NFL, follow Anthony. He'll have the list for the top tracker. Yeah, for sure. It's really starting to look like, unless there's just a home run pick, and probably not even the player made it for a top 30 visits, because like you're saying, there's not been players that have done that. But unless it's a home run pick at 32, I would be very much inclined to believe there's a trade back scenario and the Eagles don't pick on night one. They get a couple more draft picks, select early, middle part of the second round. You also have your 64, you know, the end of the second round. But yeah, you look at these guys and, you know, you got like a TJ Sanders, South Carolina, you got a Nic Scourton, Texas A&M, but like they're so fringe, and they could even be, you know, you could do mock drafts and like they're 35, 37, 42 range of a lot of these players, where like, do you need to take them at 32? And or is it, okay, there's a whole lot of interest in these guys, or is it like, hey, we're interested in several of these guys, so let's just plan on trading back, and then wherever we trade back to, if it's, you know, 5 slots, 7 slots, 10 slots, whoever falls in our lap there in the second round, then we'll just go ahead and take that player, because we're giving ourselves several options and different outs on it. And that's what I'm kind of starting to believe is happening because of those different visits. So a little bit, I'd say, well, a lot less likely than last season with the draft, because we saw so many of those players like, oh, hey, there's a top 10 guy right there. You know, is he going to move up and make that type of position? Not the same type of candidates and guys bringing in.
Maybe round 2, though, is where they make their move. They did it last year, you know, obviously drafting towards the end of round 2. They go up to 40 was Cooper DeJean. He was around the 40s because they loved him, and obviously he fell. So you need somebody to actually fall, which we've talked about how this draft is not as loaded. You know, you just kind of mentioned it there. It's not as loaded as it was last year. But I'd just be very surprised if Philadelphia goes into this draft with 8 picks and leaves with anything more than 8 picks, right? They go in with 8, make a couple of trades and draft 10 players this year, or they go in with 8, make a couple of trades, they come out with 6, you know, overall picks, but then they add 2 more next season, 14 picks in 2026. Like, or sorry, not 14. It would be 12 picks in 2026.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, there's just no way they're going to take 20 players the next 2 seasons, right? So at some point, they got to get rid of those picks by moving up. Schefter did make a little hint that they could trade those picks for a player, maybe a veteran player. Who knows who that would be?
I know.
But I think they're going to be a little busy. I think that they are.
Yep, I could certainly see that. Like you said, there's 20 picks combined between both over the next 2 years. So if it's not in the first round, let's just say this, and this is not going out on a limb. This is an Adam Schefter type of statement here. But let's just say night 2 is for sure going to be a whole lot more busy than night 1 for the Eagles. I would bet a ton of money on that. Night 2 is going to be busier because of there's one selection there. They could trade up, sure. It could totally happen. Or they could trade back. But there's only one move there. There's only one pick. For night 2, that's the part where I'm like, okay, if they traded back, they've maybe got 2 selections. I could even see a scenario where they're like, hey, let's go trade up again in the second round. They come away with a couple players, or you have the third round option as well. But I think that there's going to be a lot more there. But that's not necessarily the worst thing because we've said so many different times. You look at this draft class, and it's from 10, 15 range to 50, 60, in terms of prospect rankings, 15 to 50 or 60 in that range. There's a lot of really solid talent. It may not be as deep or may not be as star power as some other drafts, but you could get some starters out there. I think Daniel Jeremiah said it on a recent podcast too. He was like, there's not maybe the high profile guys or the guys that are just they're going to fly off the board super quick to be able to go throughout the entire first round or much of the first round, but you could find some definite starter quality talent. And let's be honest, if we're looking at the Eagles and their areas of need, you don't necessarily have to go out and get that star player. They have a huge component of core players, position here, position there. Maybe you like a guy, get a couple starters, and you're good to go.
Well, and the good news that we're also seeing, and again, so early from the draft, this can change, but you're seeing Shedeur Sanders start to fall, which I think is a good thing for Philadelphia, good for anybody, past 15. The quarterback falls a little bit. Someone can go ahead and move up, get kind of these other star defensive players to fall back a little bit. And you're seeing Jackson Dart and Jalen Milroe really almost, Dart to me is a guaranteed first rounder. I have a lot of arguments with some friends from church, actually, who's telling me there's no way Jackson Dart's going to go in the first round. And yet I'm telling you, Jackson Dart's going to go in the first round just because it's a weak class. And there's some people that think they could mold him into, a Josh Allen type body, Josh Allen type playing style, whatever. But Jalen Milroe is now getting a lot of buzz, right? There's this report out, I forget who it's from, saying the Cleveland Browns are kind of preparing they'll take Travis Hunter at number 2 overall, and then they're going to make sure that it's either Jalen Milroe or Jackson Dart that they come out of this draft with, which means you probably got to come back into round 1 at the very end, maybe trade with Philadelphia, maybe not. But if you could get 3 to 4 quarterbacks going in round 1, from where it was a couple of weeks ago of just 2, just Cam Ward and just Shedeur Sanders, that's 2 other non-quarterback positions that then go ahead and domino backwards and gives Philadelphia a higher chance of getting who they want. Because remember, last year, Josh, Quinyon Mitchell falls to Philadelphia because they're running quarterbacks. Truly, he got to 22 because of how many quarterbacks went so darn early. In this year's draft class, Quinyon Mitchell is a top 12 pick, top 15 pick, maybe a top 10 pick. Just shows you how impactful quarterbacks going in round 1 are. And the fact we're getting rumors of 2 more, bringing it up to 4 in the first round I think it's good news for Philadelphia.
Yeah, there's been, I think it was Phil Yates that put out some sort of tweet. They were like, hey, who do the Eagles get at 32? And he said something like, well, it feels like the normal annual tradition of the top 15 player that somehow slides to 32, and they're like, oh well, there you go, he goes to the Philadelphia Eagles. So I'm curious to see who that ends up being, but again, I would lean towards, unless it is that top 15 guy who falls in the draft and it's like, oh my gosh, how did the Eagles get another player like this? I really would bet money that they're going to trade back and get into the second round, but we'll see. We're right with you, Dirty D, as far as the draft. Super hyped. It's what are we? We're like two-ish weeks, almost 2-ish.
Is it 16 days? Is it 16 days?
Yeah, from tomorrow.
15 days?
15 days. Tomorrow would be 2 weeks.
Days.
Thursday.
Yeah.
For the draft.
Yeah.
So that's crazy. It's very wild how quick it just comes by. So him with the 7, appreciate that, says, wish we had Fangio when we traded for Kevin Byard. I bet Fangio can bring Simmons back to all-pro form. I like the move. If it happens, hope it's cheap.
It will be cheap, right? You got to figure it's less than $8 million. That's what he made with the Falcons last year. So 5 with incentives. And Philadelphia, we kind of forget all the talk pre-free agency when there were the rumors of, the big splash. We talked about Myles Garrett way too much on everyone's channel because there were all those rumors. Dana Rossini is like, Myles Garrett, and we're like, okay, how does the money work? Well, they had $30 million in free cap space. Right now, after basically spending nothing in free agency, 1-year deal here for $2 million, 1-year deal here for $3 million, $23.5 million. They're like 17th overall in the NFL in terms of cap space. So $5 million to Justin Simmons would probably make him happy at his age, at his point in his career. And the Eagles could do it without even blinking. So, and I agree about Vic Fangio. I think Vic Fangio makes everybody better. And that's not just me saying that. Other people in the league have said that, I played my best football in the Vic Fangio days. Ask Zach Bont. So I think you could really see a very, very good Justin Simmons for kind of his farewell tour with Fangio in Philadelphia.
Yeah, everyone except for the Dolphins. We'll just make that.
Besides Dolphin players,
unless
like
as long as you're not in Miami, you could be better playing for Vic Fangio. But Rich, what's up? How's it going? Says, hey guys, just jumping on. What did I miss? Nothing massive in terms of news, but the Wednesday link is just an earlier session. So hopping on discussing the Justin Simmons comments and him pleading. I think what Anthony said earlier, I think in the chat, saying that he's practically pleading. I think
he said the word
to
pleading.
Go to the Eagles, and I would too. Because what team would you? We've talked about this so many different times with whatever free agent. You mentioned Myles Garrett a second ago, but it's like if money is not your biggest thing, like it'd be like, okay, I want to get paid, but money's not your biggest thing. You're trying to either prolong your career and or chase a Super Bowl title while you're doing it and play for a defensive coordinator who's going to make you look good. You're going to have to put in the work for sure, but he's got to make you look good. Then, I mean, my gosh, who would you go with other than Philly? Like that's the number one option. Absolutely. You look at the number one defense, the youth, you got the positional coaches to go for it. I just don't see why not. I am curious though, because go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, and if the whole Justin Reed, Eagles tried to get him is actually a true statement, then they clearly still want a safety. So either way, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, I feel like there's got to be something in the works. Not to the expense of a Justin Reed, but it doesn't have to be with Justin Simmons, like you've been saying. So it's just a matter. I'll keep saying it. It's a matter of when, not if. In my mind, at this point, that is the question. I was going to bring up though, as far as you look at guys who can come over, make some impacts. It's similar to the sense of, because you look at some of the veterans that Howie's brought in so far and trying to fill some gaps, or guys that have already had some experience in the league. You've got a Josh Uche who's trying to prove a point, make a point. You've got a Azeez Ojulari, a Dory Jackson. These number of guys, Simmons just fits kind of right in there. And I know that he's like the all-pro, so I'm not trying to make it lesser for him, but from this past season and where he's at age-wise, like 31, would be 32 at some point in the middle of the next season, it just makes a whole lot of sense. This is one of those, as we're talking about, the kind of stopgap. If he plays great, you know what? That's gravy. That's even better. But if not, you got a guy that Sidney Brown can learn from, because they didn't necessarily have maybe as much of that mentor, perhaps, because we've seen it in a lot of other roles, like a BG for Nolan, a Jason Kelce for Cam Jurgens, name your player, Fletcher Cox for Jalen Carter. So even though Justin Simmons is not being with the Eagles for a long time, he's been with Fangio. So even that, he can help teach Sidney Brown and be like, hey, look, this is what you should do. This is what you're not. And I think that he's that type of player that wouldn't be like, no, I'm here to, get paid. I'm not wanting you to steal my job or anything, because he'd be on a 1 year kind of minimal but guaranteed. I'm sure he's wanting to get as much guaranteed as possible. Why wouldn't you, especially at his age? So it just makes too much sense for me, I think, the more that you think about it.
I agree. It seems very, very clear. But as we've seen with Howie Roseman in the past, it's very interesting to see how these things sort of go. We just got a Snapchat. We just got here, super chat here from 48 Waves saying, lately draft picks come from top 30 visits. NFL is aware and will target them. Maybe Howie is smoke screening will move up for players not at the top 30 visits. I have not thought about that, but it makes sense in terms of Howie Roseman, pulling off a little switcheroo in the National Football League, because Anthony DeBona, of all people, has ruined the National Football League that, hey, Howie takes top 30 visits because he's detailed it so well. It's like 100% of their first rounders the past couple of years have all been top 30 visits. So obviously I love Anthony, but maybe that is the smokescreen. Who knows? We'll have to see. You do like to think, though, that they're going to, if they really are interested in you, they're going to bring you in for a top 30 visit. I mean, come on. It makes sense. Unless, I think Mike Green is kind of a name that's starting to get thrown around a little bit here. The edge rusher from Marshall,
Wouldn't mind that.
I think is probably the second best edge rusher behind Abdul Carter. And there's an argument that Mike Green is better. He just played at Marshall, but the sack numbers are insane. If he were to be there at 18, right? Because I don't think he gets past the 20s, and probably not past 15. But do you just go and just grab him without a visit? Because they probably met him at some point during the Senior Bowl, the Combine, whatever it is. Not the Senior Bowl, but the NFL Combine. Sure, why not? But you like to think they're going to bring in the guy that they're going to eventually draft because that's what history said. So who knows?
And there's a bigger, I'm right there with you, but there's a bigger locker room element to it as well. 48, I also understand the argument of like, hey, at some point, Howie's going to zig when everybody else is zagging and vice versa. But like, there's just a little bit extra of like that meeting in Philly, the top 30 visit. You could get it from the Combine, yes, but I think that it's just, you want to know the right guys that you're bringing in to the Eagles organization. And I think that over the last couple years, Howie has emphasized that even more so. It's not that he hadn't focused on that, but you hear in a lot of these interviews, he goes like, we're not just looking for the physical tools, the tools in the body. We're looking for the right guys. We're looking for the Red Star players. We're looking for the intangibles. We're looking for the character, the guys that what it means to be a Philadelphia Eagle. And so, there are some guys, look, that just jump off the page and you're like, yes, that's an automatic home run. But sitting at 32, we're not getting Abdul Carter. So, like, forget about it. I know we're going to get one comment in a second, but just don't.
I haven't seen it yet, but we are going to get
that.
Do
not say that, because that's not going to it's too far out. There's not a trade to make that happen. So, because that's the case, I think you have to draft based on, hey, there's a lot of good physical tools, but you have to draft on the intangibles at the 32 position, at the 32nd position, and that's kind of what Nolan Smith was. Now, granted, he had a lot of physical ability, but he started to slide. And then you're like, Howie even said at that point in that draft, he's like, there was talk about possibly trading back, but eventually we looked at it. We said, hey, we know this player. Let's not make this too difficult. Let's not overthink it. Let's just make the selection. And you see how that turned out. So I think at 32, it's a similar scenario. And, like you were bringing up Anthony's stat, but yeah, the top 3 picks over the last 2 years being 100% on top 30 visits, that maybe they go opposite of that. But, that's just one of those that, fine. They take one guy from your top 30 visits. Yeah. You have multiple selections there. You kind of have different outs if you need to. So, I don't know. We'll see.
Now, as always, plenty more stuff happening the next couple of days and weeks. If this video gets to 60K views, I'll go ahead and announce the winner of the Super Bowl t-shirt on my next show, probably on Monday of next week. And of course, get ready because we're a couple of weeks away from giving away this thing. I wish I could keep this just on my desk right here, but one of you guys is going to win it. So be sure to go ahead and hit the notification bell and subscribe. That way, it could be you. I'm Thomas Mott, hanging out here on a Friday. This has been the Thomas Mott Show.